There is a type of person the world never sees coming. Not the loud one, not the aggressive one, not the one who argues, who fights, who makes sure everyone knows how strong he is. The one the world never sees coming is the kind one. The one who gave too much. The one who forgave too easily. The one who stayed longer than he should have. Not because he was weak, but because he believed people could be better than they were. And then one day, without warning, without drama, without a single raised voice, he went silent. No explanation, no argument, no goodbye speech, just silence. The kind of silence that is louder than anything he ever said. And suddenly, everyone noticed. Not because he left, but because the warmth he carried, the patience, the understanding, the quiet generosity, was gone. And in its place was something they had never felt from him before. Distance, a calm, unmovable, terrifying distance. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled with compassion, who chose mercy when he could have chosen punishment, who treated even his enemies with dignity, wrote something late at night that most people read too quickly. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. He did not write that from a place of softness. He wrote it from a place of steel wrapped in silk. He was the kindest emperor Rome ever had, and also the most unshakable. Because his kindness wasn't weakness, it was a choice, and a man who chooses to be kind is far more dangerous than a man who has no other option. This video is about that man, the man who gave everything, and then stopped. Not because he ran out of kindness, but because he finally understood where that kindness deserved to go. If you have ever been called too nice by someone who benefited from your niceness, if you have ever felt the strange power of walking away without saying a word, then this video was not made for an audience. It was made for you. Let us begin. Let us be honest about something the world refuses to say out loud. Kindness, the way most people practice it, is not a virtue. It is a habit, and not all habits serve you. There is a difference between being kind and being addicted to being kind. The first is a choice made from strength. The second is a pattern learned from fear. The fear of rejection, the fear of conflict, the fear of being seen as difficult or cold or selfish. And here is where the trap begins. When you are kind out of fear, people do not respect your kindness. They consume it. They learn that you will always say yes. They learn that your boundaries are suggestions, not walls. They learn that no matter how much they take, you will find a way to give more. Not because you want to, but because you don't know how to stop. Seneca saw this pattern 2,000 years ago in Rome. He watched generous men give their time, their energy, their resources to people who never once asked how they were doing in return. And he wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." Think about what he is really saying. The kind person does not keep giving because the consequences of stopping are real. He keeps giving because the imagined consequences, the guilt, the fear of being disliked, not the terror of being alone, feel worse than the actual cost of continuing. But they aren't worse. They are illusions, and the kind man has been obeying those illusions for so long that he has forgotten they are not real. This is the trap. Unconditional kindness, kindness with no filter, no boundary, no criteria for who receives it, is not generosity. It is self-erasure. You are not giving from abundance. You are giving from depletion. And every time you do, the gap between who you are and who they need you to be grows wider. Epictetus said it with surgical precision. No man is free who is not master of himself. And the kind man who cannot say no, who cannot walk away, who cannot sit in the discomfort of someone else's disappointment, is not free. He is a prisoner wearing a smile, and the prison is made entirely of his own permission. The first step out of that prison is not anger. It is not revenge. It is not becoming cruel. The first step is silence. Here is a truth that will hurt before it helps. The people who took advantage of your kindness did not respect it, not because they were evil, but because you made it too easy to take. Think about how value works. We do not value what is always available. We value what is rare. Water in a desert is worth more than water next to a river. Not because the water is different, but because access is different. Your kindness worked the same way. You gave it freely, constantly, without conditions. And in doing so, without realizing it, you trained the people around you to believe it had no value, not because it was worthless, but because it was always there. No, like air, like gravity, like something they did not need to earn, because it would show up regardless of how they behaved. And when something is free and unlimited, people stop noticing it. They stop being grateful for it. They start expecting it. And eventually, they start resenting you. Not for being kind, but for making them feel obligated to appreciate something they never asked for in that quantity. Marcus Aurelius understood this at a level most people never reach. He was emperor. He could have demanded respect. Instead, he gave compassion to soldiers, to senators, to enemies. And many of them took that compassion and mistook it for weakness. They tested him. They pushed boundaries. They whispered that he was too soft to lead. He wrote about this directly. How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? He knew the cost of reacting, but he also knew something deeper, the cost of giving endlessly without discernment. Because Marcus did not give kindness to everyone equally. He gave it deliberately. He observed who honored it and who exploited it. And for those who exploited it, he did not explode. He did not punish. He simply adjusted. He gave less access, less energy, less of himself, not out of cruelty, out of accuracy. And this is the shift that transforms a kind person from a target into a force. It is not about becoming less kind. It is about becoming more precise. Kindness without precision is charity to those who do not need it. Kindness with precision is a weapon only the wise know how to use. Seneca put it plainly. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those who you are capable of improving. 2 filters. That is all you need. Is this person making me better? Am I making this person better? If both answers are no, your kindness is not being invested. It is being wasted. And wasted kindness does not make you noble. It makes you tired. There is a moment, and if you are watching this, you probably already know it, where something inside the kind person shifts. It does not happen with a bang. There is no dramatic fight. No final straw that looks like a final straw. It is quieter than that. More internal. More devastating. It is the moment you realize, with absolute, calm, irreversible clarity, that the person standing in front of you does not see you. They see what you provide. They see the comfort, the patience, the reliability, the warmth. But they don't see the human being generating all of it. They see the function, not the person. And in that moment, something dies. Not your kindness, your illusion. The illusion that if you just gave a little more, tried a little harder, loved a little deeper, they would finally see you, finally appreciate you, finally treat you the way you have been treating them. That illusion was the only thing holding the pattern together. And when it breaks, when you finally see that the equation was never going to balance, You do not cry. You do not scream. You do not explain. You go quiet. And that quiet is not defeat. It is the most powerful thing you have ever done. Because for the first time in your life, you chose yourself, without apology, without justification, from without asking anyone's permission. Epictetus described this shift thousands of years ago. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it, that matters." The kind person's break is not a reaction. It is the end of reacting. It is the moment where the automatic pattern, give, forgive, give again, forgive again, finally stops. Not because you ran out of love, but because you finally directed some of it inward. Marcus Aurelius experienced this in his own life, surrounded by people who flattered him to his face and conspired behind his back, people who accepted his mercy and immediately tested it again. And at some point, not in a speech, not in a decree, but in the silence of his journal, he stopped expecting them to change. He wrote for himself. He stopped writing for their benefit. That is the break. So not a breakdown, a breakthrough. The moment the kind person stops performing kindness for an audience that never bought a ticket and starts investing it in the only person who always showed up, himself, and the world, the friends, the family, the people who were comfortable with the old version. They feel it immediately, not because you said anything, but because the warmth shifted. The automatic yes became a considered pause. The open door became a closed one, not locked, but no longer propped open for anyone to walk through. And that pause, that closed door, that silence is what terrifies them, because they do not know who you are without your kindness. And honestly, until this moment, neither did you. Most people think silence is the absence of communication. It is not. Silence is the most fluent language a human being can speak. It says everything, without giving anyone the ammunition to argue with it. Think about it. When you explain yourself, you give people material to debate. When you argue, you give people positions to attack. When you justify, you give people reasons to question. But when you say nothing, when you simply stand in your truth without performing it, there is nothing to grab onto, nothing to push back against, nothing to manipulate. And that is exactly why silence terrifies people who are used to controlling the conversation. The kind person who goes silent does not disappear. He becomes unreadable. And in a world where everyone is constantly broadcasting their emotions, posting their feelings, arguing their positions, not explaining their decisions, an unreadable man is a dangerous man, not because he is hiding something, but because he has stopped giving his power away through words. Seneca understood the economics of speech. He lived in a Rome where words were currency, where senators built careers on rhetoric, where reputations were made and destroyed in a single conversation. And in that environment, Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future." What does that have to do with silence? Everything. Because most speech is not about the present, it is about the future, trying to control how someone will perceive you, trying to prevent a conflict that has not happened yet, trying to secure approval that you should not need. Silence is what happens when you stop trying to control outcomes that were never yours to control. Marcus Aurelius practiced this as emperor. When advisors argued, he listened. When generals demanded reactions, he paused. When the Senate expected dramatic speeches, he gave measured responses. His silence was not weakness, it was filtration. He let the noise enter, processed it through his own principles, and only released what served a purpose. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That power, the power over your own mind, is exercised most visibly through silence, because every word you do not say in anger is a rep. Every explanation you do not give to someone who does not deserve it is a rep. Every justification you swallow, not out of fear, but out of strategy, builds a muscle that most people never develop. The kind person who masters silence does not become cold. He becomes selective. He still speaks, but only when his words serve his truth, not someone else's comfort. He still communicates, but through presence, through action, through the undeniable weight of a man who does not need to be heard to be felt. If something in this video just described the exact shift happening inside you right now, if this silence is not emptiness, but the beginning of something powerful, then this channel was built for exactly where you are. Subscribe. The conversation continues. The Stoics were not against kindness. They were against unconscious kindness. There is a version of kindness that Marcus Aurelius practiced every day, and it looked nothing like what the modern world calls being nice. It was harder, sharper, more expensive, and infinitely more effective. The Stoic version of kindness operates on one fundamental principle. Kindness must be a choice, not a reflex. The moment kindness becomes automatic, the moment you give without thinking, forgive without evaluating, help without questioning, it stops being a virtue and becomes a vulnerability. Marcus Aurelius woke up every morning and reminded himself, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. That is not cynicism. That is preparation. He did not write that to hate people. He wrote it so that his kindness would be informed, not naive. He wanted to walk into each day with his eyes open, so that when he chose to be kind, it was a real choice, made with full awareness of what people are capable of. This is the difference between Stoic kindness and the kindness that gets you exploited. The exploited kind person assumes the best in everyone and is repeatedly surprised by the worst. The Stoic kind person expects the full range of human behavior and chooses kindness anyway, not because he is blind, but because he has already accounted for the cost. Seneca practiced this with ruthless precision. He was generous. He gave money, time, mentorship. But he kept a private accounting of who honored those gifts and who squandered them. He did not cut people off in anger. He adjusted his investment based on evidence. This is the upgrade that transforms kindness from a weakness into a weapon. You do not stop being kind. You start being strategic about it. You observe before you give. You measure before you forgive. You evaluate before you open the door again. And when someone proves, through consistent behavior, not words, that they cannot be trusted with your kindness, you do not explain why the door is closing. You simply close it. Quietly. Permanently. Without guilt. Because guilt is the tax that other people charge you for protecting yourself. And a Stoic does not pay taxes he does not owe. There is a pattern that every kind person eventually notices, and it is one of the most disturbing realizations in human psychology. Toxic people do not target everyone. They target specific people. And those people, almost without exception, are the kind ones, the empathetic ones, the forgiving ones, the ones who see the best in people even when the evidence says otherwise. This is not a coincidence. It is a strategy, even if the toxic person does not consciously know they are using it. Here is how it works. A person who takes advantage of others needs a specific environment to operate in. They need patience, someone who will tolerate behavior that a less patient person would reject immediately. They need forgiveness, someone who will give second chances, third chances, 15th chances. They need empathy, someone who will try to understand their behavior instead of simply judging it. And who provides all three of those things naturally? The kind person. The kind person is not attracting toxicity because something is wrong with him. He is attracting it because everything that is right about him, his patience, his forgiveness, his depth, creates the exact conditions that toxic people need to survive. Epictetus saw this pattern in ancient Rome. Slaves who were kind were exploited the most. Students who were agreeable were manipulated the most. Citizens who avoided conflict were targeted the most. And from that observation, he built a philosophy centered on one radical idea. You cannot control other people, but you can control the access they have to you. He taught, "He who laughs at himself never runs out of things to laugh at." On the surface, that sounds like humor, but underneath it is a lesson about self-awareness, the ability to see your own patterns clearly enough to interrupt them. The kind person who can laugh at his own tendency to overgive, to overforgive, to overtrust, is the kind person who can finally change the pattern. Seneca wrote something that completes this idea. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Apply that in reverse. Exploitation is what happens when kindness meets a lack of boundaries. The toxic person provides the opportunity, but it is the kind person's lack of preparation, his lack of filters, his lack of limits, his lack of a boundary system that turns opportunity into a pattern. This is not victim blaming. This is power reclamation. Because if the pattern exists because of something you provide, then you have the power to stop providing it. You do not need to change the toxic person. You need to change the environment. Your environment, your boundaries, your access policy. And when you do, when the kind person installs boundaries for the first time, the toxic person does not adjust. They leave, because they cannot operate in an environment where kindness is selective, where patience has a limit, where forgiveness requires evidence of change. They do not leave because you became cruel. They leave because you became unavailable. And that distinction between cruelty and unavailability is one of the most important things a kind person will ever understand. Seneca wrote over 120 letters to his friend Lucilius. These letters, known as letters from a Stoic, are not philosophical abstractions. They are practical instructions for living in a world full of people who will drain you if you let them. In one of his most powerful letters, Seneca writes about the danger of crowds, not physical danger, psychological danger. He explains that when you spend time in the wrong company, you absorb their values, their anxieties, their mediocrity, without even realizing it. He warns Lucilius, avoid the crowd, not because you are better than them, but because you are not yet strong enough to remain yourself among them. This is not arrogance. This is strategy. Seneca practiced strategic withdrawal throughout his life. When the political environment in Rome became too toxic, he stepped back. When relationships became more costly than valuable, when he reduced his presence. When the noise of public life threatened his clarity, he retreated to his writings, to his thoughts, to the inner world that no one could access without his permission. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it. Every minute you spend maintaining a relationship that drains you, every hour you invest in someone who never invests back, every day you waste performing kindness for an audience that doesn't see you, is time stolen from the one life you will ever have." Strategic withdrawal is not running away. It is a calculated decision to invest your finite energy in people and pursuits that actually deserve it. The Stoic does not leave in anger. He leaves in clarity. He does not slam the door. he simply stops opening it. And the beauty of this approach is that it requires no confrontation, no dramatic goodbye, no burning of bridges. You simply become less available. You respond slower. You give less. You show up less. And the people who truly care, the ones who actually see you, will notice and reach out. The ones who only cared about what you provided will fade away. And that fading, that quiet separation, tells you everything you need to know about who deserved your presence in the first place. The Stoics described a concept called the inner citadel, a fortress inside the mind that no external force can penetrate. Marcus Aurelius used this concept daily, not as metaphor, as survival. But here is what most philosophy channels miss about the inner citadel. It is not built by hard people. It is built by kind people who got tired of being unprotected. The hard person does not need a citadel. He has walls already, built from cynicism, from distrust, from the decision to never feel anything deeply. Those walls are effective, but they are also prisons. Nothing gets in, but nothing gets out either. No connection, no warmth, no depth. The kind person's citadel is different. It has doors, it has windows, it lets light in and warmth out. But it also has guards, and those guards are discernment, self-awareness, and the willingness to close the gate when someone proves they cannot be trusted inside. Marcus Aurelius built this kind of citadel. He was not a cold emperor hiding behind marble walls. He was a compassionate leader who learned, through years of betrayal, loss, and disappointment, that compassion without protection is destruction, and protection without compassion is emptiness. The citadel holds both. This is the architecture you are building right now, whether you know it or not. Every time you choose silence over explanation, you are laying a stone. Every time you withdraw your energy from someone who wasted it, you are reinforcing a wall. Every time you forgive, but adjust your access, not from anger, but from wisdom, you are installing a gate. And inside that citadel, behind the walls you built with every lesson you survived, lives the version of you that the world hasn't seen yet. Not the people-pleaser, not the doormat, not the man who says yes when his body screams no. The version of you that is kind and untouchable, warm and unmovable, generous and precise. That version is not born, he is built. Stone by stone, silence by silence, boundary by boundary. And once he is finished, once the citadel is complete, the world will feel him before he enters a room. Not because he is loud, but because he is whole. And wholeness, in a world of fragmented people, is the most intimidating thing that exists. Something strange happens when the kind person stops giving. The people who benefited from that kindness, who consumed it daily like oxygen, do not immediately understand what happened. They feel the absence before they understand the cause. Something is different. The room feels colder. The relationship feels thinner. The person who is always available is suddenly not. And here is where the power shift begins. When you were always giving, always present, always warm, always there, they had no reason to evaluate what you meant to them. You were a constant, like the floor beneath their feet. They did not appreciate the floor because the floor was never going to disappear. But when the floor moves, even slightly, everyone loses their balance. This is what your silence does. It forces reevaluation, not through manipulation, through absence. You did not ask them to appreciate you. You simply stopped being available for depreciation. And in that gap, in the space where your warmth used to be, they are forced to confront a question they never had to ask before. What did he actually mean to me? Some of them will answer that question honestly. and reach out. They will see for the first time the weight of what you carried, the patience you maintained, the forgiveness you offered without being asked. And they will come back, not to the old version of you, but to the new one, the one with doors instead of open fields, the one who requires reciprocity before he gives access. Others will not answer honestly. They will rewrite the story. They will call you selfish. They will say you changed. They will tell others that you abandoned them, without mentioning what they took from you for years. And here is where the Stoic training pays off. Marcus Aurelius dealt with exactly this. When he set boundaries with people who exploited his position, they did not say, "I understand." They said, "He has changed. He's no longer the man he used to be." And Marcus, in the silence of his journal, did not defend himself. He simply wrote his truth for himself. Because defending yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you is the most expensive waste of energy a kind person can commit. It costs everything and changes nothing. Let them tell their version. Let them rewrite you. Your silence is not agreement. It is disengagement from a game you no longer play. Epictetus never explained himself. This is remarkable because he had more to explain than almost anyone in the ancient world. He was born a slave. He was physically broken by his master. He was exiled from Rome. He lived in poverty by choice. He never married for most of his life. He taught in a small school in a small town, while his contemporaries chased power in the capital. By every external measure, his life looked like failure. And yet he never once defended his choices, never once justified his path, or never once gave the world an explanation it could judge. He simply said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And then he lived it, without commentary, without performance, without asking anyone to understand. This is the final evolution of the kind person who goes silent. It is not just silence towards specific people. It is the release of the need to be understood by anyone. Think about how much energy you spend explaining yourself, explaining why you left, explaining why you are different now, explaining why you need space, explaining why you cannot give what you used to give. Every explanation is an invitation for the other person to evaluate your reasons, judge your motives, and decide whether your boundaries are valid. But your boundaries do not need validation. They need enforcement. Seneca described this with chilling clarity. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. The suffering you imagine from not explaining, the rejection, the misunderstanding, the loneliness, is almost always worse than what actually happens. In reality, when you stop explaining, one of two things occurs. Either people respect the boundary and adjust, which means they were capable of respect all along, and simply were not given a reason to practice it. Or they leave, which means their presence was conditional on your performance, and the relationship was already over long before your silence made it official. Either outcome is a win. The first gives you better relationships. The second gives you freedom from false ones. Epictetus spent his entire life proving that a man who does not explain himself is a man who cannot be controlled. Because control requires leverage, and the most common leverage people use against the kind person is guilt. Why did you stop calling? Why are you so distant? Why have you changed? Every answer you give to those questions is a foothold for manipulation. But silence, genuine, calm, undefensive silence, removes every foothold. There is nothing to grab, nothing to argue with, nothing to twist. You are simply gone. Not angry, not bitter, just redirected. Toward yourself, toward your citadel, toward the life that begins when you stop narrating it for an audience. Everything in this video means nothing if it stays here. You can understand the theory. You can agree with the philosophy. You can feel the truth of every word. But unless this enters your daily practice, your actual morning, your actual conversations, your actual decisions, it remains entertainment. And you deserve more than entertainment. You deserve transformation. So here is the practice, the Stoic system for becoming the kind person who is no longer exploitable, without becoming the cold person who is no longer human. Part 1. The morning audit. Before you speak to anyone, before you check your phone, before you enter the world, sit for 5 minutes and ask yourself one question. Who has access to my energy today, and do they deserve it? Not, who will contact me? Not, who expects me to show up? But who deserves the limited, irreplaceable energy that I'm about to spend? Write 3 names. Only 3. Those are your priority investments for the day. Everyone else gets politeness, but not depth. Part 2. The pause protocol. Every time someone asks something of you today, a favor, your time, your emotional energy, do not respond immediately. Pause. Not for dramatic effect, for evaluation. Ask yourself, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? Because every yes has a hidden no. Yes to their request means no to your rest. Yes to their drama means no to your peace. Yes to their expectation means no to your boundaries. Choose your yes carefully. Part 3. The evening review. Marcus Aurelius did this every night. Before sleep, he reviewed his day, not with guilt, but with precision. He asked, where did I give my energy today? Was it invested or wasted? Where did I hold my boundary, and where did I let it slip? What would the man I am becoming, the citadel builder, the silent force, have done differently? This is not self-punishment. This is architecture. You are designing a mind that is kind by choice, not by reflex, generous by strategy, not by compulsion, silent by power, not by defeat. The Stoics did not become unshakable through sudden enlightenment. They became unshakable through daily repetition of small, precise, quiet disciplines. 5 minutes in the morning, a pause before every yes, a review before every sleep. That is the formula. It is not glamorous. It is not dramatic. It will not make a good social media post. But it will, over weeks and months, rebuild the internal architecture of a man who used to be kind and taken advantage of into a man who is kind and untouchable. And when that transformation is complete, when the daily practice becomes the daily self, people will feel it. Not because you announce it, but because the frequency you emit changes. The way you enter a room changes. The way you hold eye contact changes. The weight behind your silence changes. And they will look at you, the same man, the same face, the same voice, and they will sense something they cannot name, something that makes them careful, something that makes them respectful, something that tells them without a single word, this man is no longer free to take from. Let me tell you what kind of man you are becoming. Not the angry man, not the bitter man, not the man who hurt others because he was hurt. That path exists, and many take it. But you are not many. You are the man who was kind. Genuinely, deeply, painfully kind. And instead of letting that kindness destroy him, he learned to wield it. Like a blade that cuts only what needs cutting. Like a fire that warms only those who deserve warmth. Like a silence that says more than 1,000 explanations ever could. Marcus Aurelius was this man. He led an empire with compassion, but compassion that had teeth. Seneca was this man. He gave generously, but with a ledger that tracked who honored the gift. Epictetus was this man. He taught freely, but never wasted a word on someone who was not ready to hear it. These were not cold men. These were the most dangerous kind of men. Kind men who understood the value of what they carried and refused to hand it to anyone who would drop it. And that is exactly what you are building. Not a wall against the world, a filter for it. A system that lets the right people in and keeps the wrong ones at a distance. Not through anger, but through the quiet, calm, unshakable authority of a man who finally knows his own worth. If you stayed until this moment, you are not just a viewer. You are one of the silent ones, the kind ones, the ones the world underestimates every day and will one day deeply regret underestimating. This channel exists for minds like yours. Subscribe. This is where the quiet ones become unbreakable. I will leave you with one final thought. It is not from Marcus Aurelius. It is not from Seneca. It is not from Epictetus. It is from the version of you that is waiting on the other side of this silence. You were never too kind. You were just kind to the wrong people. And now that you know the difference, the world should be paying attention. Because kind people are the most dangerous when they finally go silent.